That's your boy Gooch.
That is, of course, Keys.
And this is the RogueHead Huddle presented by RGR Football. Gooch?
Appreciate you all for checking us out this Friday. Hope you're having a great day. Go back and check some of our previous shows. I believe you'll like them. Become a member. Check out the RGR store. Join the live stream. Keys and I and Aaron are usually in the chat. There is Chief in the North on Thursday and everything else that RGR has to offer. Take this walk with us, guys.
Yep, we're now removed from football with the Super Bowl in the past now and the Rams winning. And coulda, woulda, shoulda been the Chiefs, but better the Rams than the Bengals.
Absolutely. Oh, and for those of you who aren't members, you should become members because we held the Gooch Invitational during the regular season and the playoffs. And I won both of those. We do. It's the My Father Picks pool. We pick the games. We talk about them during the playoffs. We did the spreads, win, losses, stuff like that. But I am your champion this year, so we will do it again next year. Anyway, back to the other topics.
I mean, if we're going to say that, we'll just go ahead and mention again that I won the RGR Fantasy Football League. So
please be aware that the Huddle Bros took home the Triple Crown this year.
We did. So we're going to hit some topics here today. Of course, we're now in the off season, so we're going to get some things out of the way, things that people are interested in, people that are asking about, things that maybe we don't know, so we need to talk about. So I think we all know this topic really well, and so we're just going to start with this one: positions of need for free agency in the draft. What are our positions of need as you see it, Gooch, as I see it on this team as it stands today?
Positions of need. I actually, you know what? We need a new backup quarterback. I love anything is possible, but unless it's Alex, you don't need another veteran back there. Now, so you need to be grooming a young guy for, God forbid, something happened to Patrick. You need a bell cow back. I know that there are a lot of fans of Darrell and McKinnon, but McKinnon is on the wrong side of 30 with knee injuries or recovery from knee injuries. Clyde just doesn't have the explosiveness that we thought he had, or that he was playing, which is hard to say because he was in the SEC inferior competition, so it looked like he had more explosion than he did. We need a second wide receiver. Now, I know people are going to say Josh Gordon because we signed him to a futures deal, but Josh Gordon is also on the wrong side of 30 or really close. And he had good hands, but we didn't see any example of that. Now, of course, he joined the team halfway through the season. Maybe he didn't have the playbook down and he was pressing. But I still think we need somebody beyond that because, please, Lord, let DeMarcus go. I would say, and I know Keys is probably going to agree with me on this one, I would probably say we need a right tackle to groom. I think the rest of our line is solid, and I think Niang may be a little too injury prone to be a fixture. Defensive side of the ball, you need a new edge. You know what? You don't even really need a new edge. You just need to not be paying someone $100 million for an average of 6.5 sacks and 29 tackles a year. I would probably re-sign Melvin. Problem with re-signing Melvin is Melvin wants to take his time now because he showed something and he thinks he's going to get another big contract and the Chiefs can't wait. I would say one more linebacker if you're not going to let Dorian O'Daniel play the other the other linebacker spot because you've got Bolton and Gay, and you've got I've got some. I can't remember his name now, but there's somebody back there that's got some talent. He either went undrafted. I can't think of his name now. I'm probably going to be the only one to say this. I actually think you need a number one corner. I think Snead is a solid number two, but I also think that there's some talent in college that could outplay Snead. Ward is going to be priced out of our price range on this defense. The one thing I do agree with Ryan is that if you allow Ward to press all the time, he's a solid corner. But because of the scheme that Spagnuolo likes to play, he doesn't press as often. So you need another number one who can play zone and man and have the speed. I'm going to say Deion Sanders, Darrell Green speed to play catch up in case he gets burnt. Because Snead's a solid number two. All the numbers agree he's a number two. You need to, and probably another safety. Now, I only say that because Tyron's going to be 30, even if you do re-sign him. In my eyes, Tyron is a slot corner. You can bring him. He can play the slot. The offenses are geared more towards those short passes. And who is smarter than Tyron in the slot? So then you can bring Juan up and get you another free safety to play center field, or bring Armani, give Armani Watts some playing time, and bring him in and let Juan play. Well, Armani has a better nose for the ball than Juan, I think. Armani just doesn't have the long speed that Juan has. But, I mean, I actually believe that'll do it on my end. What do you think?
Yeah, I think for the most part we're in agreement on a lot of things. So I think regardless of what Gordon can do this year, you need a wide receiver number two. Um, and I'm actually higher on Gordon than, well, his potential this year than you are. I mean, whether he's 29, 30, even close to 30, he hasn't played that much football, so he doesn't have the wear and tear on his body from it. So I'd like to see what he looks like in training camp, having a year under his belt in the system with the playbook. As you know, if you don't know the playbook, and this is a notoriously complex playbook apparently, but as when you're trying to think through every single thing, it becomes a lot easier to start dropping balls, just because you're always thinking, and it's mentally taxing on you to have to constantly be thinking through everything. And so I'm going to give Gordon the benefit of the doubt, but I still want to get a number two wide receiver. And I go back and forth on this because if Fortson comes back healthy, I think we have enough there. But at the same time, I still think you can go out and get another receiver. And there's a scenario where I would be all for trying to go out and get Devonte Adams and trade Tyreek, if you can't get an extension worked out. This is last year of his contract. You can get a good bit for him, even with that, from another team. You just got to give him a period to, have contract negotiation talks with him. I'd like to see, we're doing position of need, so I don't want to really get into everything. We've kind of done that before, but I'm with you. Right tackle. I might be the only one who doesn't feel perfectly fine with left tackle. I'm just not sure there's options out there where we're going to be able to upgrade, which kind of scares me because I don't want to be locked into a long-term deal with Orlando Brown. I'm with you on backup quarterback. Um, uh, Running back, the guys we had worked as a patchwork running back room. They all have different strengths. Ideally, though, you want an actual feature back who brings basically all of that himself. And there's multiple reasons that I say this, and one of them is Coach Chris Vassar pointed out on Twitter during the Super Bowl, and I haven't went back to see if he confirmed this or not, but he believed that the Bengals were playing defense like they were doing two totally different things depending on which running back the Rams were using. And so, that makes it way too easy on a defense when you have a one-dimensional running back on your roster. And so they say, okay, CEH is in, it's going to be a run, right? Because how many passes did we see CEH get? Daryl's back there, so it's gonna be a pass, or whatever it was. I think Daryl was actually probably uh, the most versatile in terms of how he was used. Right, he was back there, and he was actually pass blocking a few snaps. He was running the ball a few snaps. He was catching the ball a few snaps. Um, then McKinnon, kind of the same thing, but CEH, you didn't see that. He wasn't back pass blocking that often, and he wasn't catching the ball either. So, when he was there, it was either to run the ball or as, I guess, to stand there and look pretty for Pat on the sidelines to not get the ball thrown to him. And so you need a feature back. We need a feature back on this offense. If you cannot generate explosive plays during the pass in the pass game, you have to get them from the run game. And CEH isn't able to give us those explosive plays that are at least 10-yard runs, the way that other guys can. And you have to have those if you want to win. And if you go back and you listen to Brett Veach in his presser when CEH was drafted, which was not Mahomes' pick, by the way. I know there's people out there who have bought into that lie. That's not how it went down. Veach's scouting staff got the info on CEH. Veach watched CEH, fell in love. He went to Reed and said, "Hey, this is another Brian Westbrook. Check him out." Reed looked at him and he said, "You're wrong. He's better than Brian Westbrook." They both fell in love with him. They were going to draft him. Veach texts Pat and says, "Hey, without thinking, give me the top three guys that you would like to see us get in the draft." And the first name that he gives is CEH. And this story has turned into a myth of epic proportions. Anyway, if you go back and you watch that presser, one of the things that Veach says when he's asked by the reporters, I believe one of them was Adam Teicher, who asked him, Teicher, about CEH being the featured back. And Veach says something to the extent of, yeah, that's a legitimate question in a traditional offense. Our system is a little bit different, so we believe in our system and what we're going to do that, he'll be a featured back. But in like a typical, power run game offense, then he wouldn't be. Well, this was, we're talking 2 years ago now, and how defenses have played our offense has changed completely, since then. And so the way that we have to have our run game has changed a lot since then. We've revamped our offensive line so that they can run block better. And when you have people dropping 7 and 8 into coverage, you have to be able to run the ball. And so I would argue that Veach is basically what he said then has shown that CEH is no longer the feature back, can't be the feature back of this offense because our system has to change in order for us to run the ball with what defenses are doing. So we need a feature back. That's one of the biggest needs. Um, Defensive wise, I'm with you. We need two edges. We need another interior defensive lineman to go alongside Chris. Matt Derrick brought up an interesting point with Ryan on Locked On Chiefs, talking about the new defensive line coach coming in, and everyone or a lot of people had made a big deal out of, he's basically only really coached 3, 4 defenses. Well, as Matt pointed out, we're in our base defense very little, so when we get into sub packages, we're basically 3 defensive linemen anyway. So in a lot of ways, it makes sense. And Matt had mentioned, Chris played better as a 3, 4 um, nose tackle anyway. And so maybe getting another interior defensive line next to Chris isn't as big of a deal as I think it is. Um, but I'd still like to see it personally. Um, you have to have another third, you have to have a third linebacker, and preferably we have someone who they feel more comfortable with in the nickel and dime, because for whatever reason, Spags felt that he had to have Ben Neiman on the field way too much. Same thing with Dan Sorensen. So, your number 3 safety and your third linebacker are super important for what Spags wants to do. Um, you know, I think Matthew walks just because, it's about the money. And so if it wasn't about the money, a deal would have been done. They could have structured something that worked for everyone if it wasn't about the money and it wasn't about an enormous amount of guaranteed money. And so I think two, you got to replace 2 of your top 3 safeties. Um, I think Ward will get a lot of money, as you said, a la Steven Nelson to the Steelers a few years back, getting overpaid. Um, and I can very easily see this happening. But at the same time, if it doesn't happen, I hope they do prioritize bringing Ward back. I will say, if you go back and you watch what Ward did against the Bengals, at least the first time, I haven't gotten myself to go back and be able to watch the AFC Championship game to look at that side of things. But if you look at what Ward did, I mean, he really played Chase. He really played the receivers really well. It was just that Burrow threw perfect passes that were just out of his reach to where he couldn't do anything half of the time. And so, to me, I find that fairly impressive. Um, but that's not to say that I'm not with you that I would like to see us go out and get a legitimate number 1 corner. Um, I'd still like to try to keep Ward though, and I'd like to see, and I think that they would use Snead more in a varied role. I think they tried that this year, and some of that was kind of what was causing his struggles. So, hopefully a year or so working in that could help that out. But I think that he can be that type of guy that can be your slot corner, kind of replace a lot of the things that Tyron did. He did have that year where he played safety at Louisiana Tech, so he has the experience there. He has the speed to do a lot. They can blitz him. Um, I think that kind of frees you up. I'm all about versatility. If Tyron was willing to come back for, the right amount of money, and you have him and Snead, and you go out and you get a number 1 corner and you keep Ward and you get a third safety to where basically you can play Tyron and Snead similarly, and you can have a third safety who's basically a starting level safety. Because let's face it, even with Tyron on the field, right, in our cornerback room, even when Thornhill became the starter, Sorensen was still getting like 50% snaps. Like they were still playing a third safety 50% of the time. And, you had Neiman getting 40 or 50% of the snaps. So I think you need 2 safeties. Even if Tyron comes back, you still need another safety who is quasi starter level or better. And especially if you bring Tyron back, I think that opens things up more um, to what you can do with Tyron, who said at the end of the season, when he was having one of his Twitter rants with someone, he said, "Hey, look, Spags changed this the position I was playing basically, changed me to off ball, middle of the field safety." So he wasn't even around the action anymore. Um, and so, I think those are my big keys. Those are the positions we need. And I think two safeties, really. Two safeties, two edges, um, another linebacker, another cornerback, another interior defensive lineman.
Sounds like we're in agreement on a lot of that.
I think we are. Let's not push that topic then. Uh, but you guys let us know where we're wrong, or at least where you think we're wrong. Gooch is going to chime in and say he's never wrong. So, but let us know what you guys see as the positions of need on the offense and defense. Maybe we're just going to take a few moments here and talk about Veach's process of roster building. Now, I'm not privy to what goes on at one Arrowhead Drive. But if you watch Brett Veach's pressers and you listen to what is said, from time to time you pick up things. And one of the things that Veach talks about is having pockets of players. They have pockets of players that have grades in certain areas. And so when you get to that that place in the draft, they go through, okay, so the Chiefs pick what, 29, 30 this year. So they're going to have their pocket of players, 5, 10 players, whatever it is, that they hope or expect will be there around the time that they pick. And they'll have their consensus 15 players or so, from Veach's own words. 15 players or so that they're sure will be gone, the first 15 picks or so. So when they have that pocket, it's going to be long enough to where, okay, they're sure that whatever guys fit in there, at least one of those guys should be available. But the players are also going to be drafted on their ability, right? If you followed RGR now, you'll see that long enough. You'll see when Ryan and Dan and the guys do their big boards, they break it in to 3 tiers for each round. Early first, middle first, and then late first. Same thing with second round, third round, and so on. I imagine that's what Veach does as well when he talks about his pockets. And so, they don't just say, okay, here's our positions of need, who are the best players available here. That's who we're going to draft. They look at their pocket of players. And if they get down and there's only like one or two guys left in that pocket of players and we're still 7 or 8 picks away, this might be where Veach starts calling and tries to trade up to guarantee he gets one of the guys in the pocket. And if that's not possible, then he gets on the phone to see if he can trade down and, get value that way, so that next time he picks, he's picking a player that they have in that pocket of players, so that he's not reaching. One of the things that makes this strategy possible is that Veach likes to fill every position of need in free agency or a trade if he can swing a trade at that time. But he likes to have every single position of need filled by the time that we draft. Doesn't mean that it's a starter who's going to play, but it's at least an adequate level player who, if they had to plug in to play, they could play. Think of your Andrew Wiley playing left or right tackle, your Mike Rimmers playing right tackle there. It's not the ideal scenario, but if you have to have it, then it still works. It's adequate. And so, that's a big part of what he will do. You will see him in free agency identify their needs. He's going to plug every hole so that he's not forced to go out and get a pick that's based on a position of need so that he doesn't reach. Now, he'll likely still pick players at position of need, but he's not forced to do it. They'll look at the draft as a whole. They'll look at the positional depth as a whole. And even now, they're probably, he said multiple times, they don't just chart out one path, for each position that they need. They chart out multiple paths. He's talking about having plan A through Z. So cornerback, they'll have their list of every possible way in their mind that they come up with to acquire a cornerback. You know, um, here's the list of free agents that they would like, and here's the order that they would like these free agent cornerbacks, and we'll see what happens there. Uh, here's some possible um, cornerbacks that would be available in trade, might be available in trade, and here's what they would cost. And so they put those on their list. And here's the cornerbacks that they like in the draft. And well, here's where they might be available. Would we be able to trade up there? Would we trade back there? You know, and they add them to the list. And then, you got to put them all in order. And then you have your A through Z list. Again, I haven't seen this. I'm taking what Veach has said over the last few years, plus with what he's done, and I'm trying to marry it together and give you some insight from what I've seen in what he says and what he does. And so, we again, the Orlando Brown thing is a perfect example of this. Trent Williams was the top guy on their list. They didn't really have much else for free agent additions. One possibility would have been Joe Tooney sliding over to left tackle had they needed to, and then you would have seen that opened up a scenario for them to acquire another left guard, for instance. Orlando Brown just happened to be the second choice. He was available in trade. They didn't feel like any of the left tackles that they thought were starter level and were good enough for a team that is starting Patrick Mahomes as his quarterback, that none of the guys available would have been a good enough pick to protect Patrick uh, for this last season. So this is what you get. This year, they'll have the same thing for each position of need. They'll have every path out there, and they'll try to follow it, from what they desire most at this position to second most. They'll exhaust their way down their list if they have to, A through Z. Preferably, they get their A guy. But if not, they have a fallback with a B guy. And if not, they have a fallback with their C guy, whether that comes via trade, free agency, or the draft. So this is the process that you should expect to see out of Brett Veach as he builds this roster. I would expect as soon as free agency hits, throughout free agency, he's going to fill each hole on the roster. What we see now, as holes, he's going to have what he feels is at least an adequate, quasi starter level player at each of those position of needs. And then he'll fill in uh, through the draft as he's able to. He'll fill in through trades as he's able to. He'll bring in undrafted free agents. He'll make trades when roster cuts come in. I mean, he just keeps scouting. And so this is what we should expect to see uh, as Veach tackles this offseason. And one of the things he's already said before is that they believe in building through the trenches, offensive line and defensive line. And he's already basically made it clear to us that defensive line will be the top priority in free agency, in the draft, in the trade market as they move forward. And he's also kind of made it clear to us be through last year's free agency as well, and even the draft a little bit with Cornell Powell. but he made it clear last year that he wanted another receiver. So I would expect that we're going to see that as well this year. It'll just be interesting to see how they tackle the running back room, because I think that is just as big of a need, if not bigger, than another receiver, especially if you factor in a healthy Jody Fortson and the possibility that Gordon will fit into this offense and that the other receivers on the roster will continue to progress.
We appreciate anybody that watches this content, whether religiously or in passing. Go back, check out all the other RGR content, previous videos from us on the Huddle. Become a member. If you do become a member, join the Discord. Me and Keys are on the Discord. We're also on Twitter. And we answer any questions that you may have for us. Hit the RGR merchandise store, get you a hoodie, get you a mug. Keep a lookout for us. We have Chief in the North on Thursdays with Seth Kaiser. We've got live streams on Mondays. Dan has film breakdown. But above all else, make sure you tell somebody you love them. Again, tell somebody you love them. Check us out. Twitter, Discord. Send us a message in the chat or in the comments. We will answer your questions on the next one. We always this is the kind of stuff that we love to do. So keep in touch, and we'll catch you in the next one.
Peace out, guys.
Thanks for watching this video from the team at RGR Football. Click these videos to see more and subscribe to RGR Football.